And we're back, YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I appreciate that. Today, let's talk about Vaporum Lockdown. Vaporum Lockdown, it's... the title is good for a game to come out in 2020. It's an old-school grid-based dungeon crawler, inspired by the likes of Dungeon Master, Eye of the Beholder, and those type of games. There was Vaporum, the first game. This is, I think, supposedly a prequel to that game, but the story doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, again, supposedly the game takes place in a tower, a research facility of sorts, where people were looking into this strange substance, and some effort was made to include cutscenes and audio logs with competent voice acting. But the thing is that the story doesn't really match your surroundings. I mean, you read about characters that used to work there, and you hear them in those audio logs, but you never meet characters, and also, the game is full of levels, of mazes, complex and full of pitfalls and traps and puzzles, so it doesn't look like it's a research facility of any kind. And the gold standard of these games is The Legend of Grimrock, and in comparison, Vaporum Lockdown, it looks pretty bland. I mean, the steampunk setting is novel and all, but the execution is lacking, and interestingly, the main character says it all here.
I'm not so sure he'd be proud now. Life here in the steel cage is nothing like I imagined back then. Once the novelty faded away and the crude, cold reality crept in, all the naive dreams I had disappeared. I miss the warmth.
Especially at the beginning of the game, the game sort of recycles many of the metal-looking textures you'll find in the first game. Later on, things do get better. There's more variation in terms of how things look. What I did like is that you can make this game as old school as you want. You can choose various difficulty levels. There is an option for an auto map, and the grid-based movement can be used, the old school movement or a more fluent movement, which is a nice touch. What do you do in this game? You just sort of move around a grid one step at a time, forward, backwards, left and right. So the dungeon crawling bit is that you go through these levels that are big and again full of traps and pitfalls. An effort has been made to mix things up, but after a while you get into the grind of it all, which means that you're doing the same thing, like you're walking along a corridor and there's a door that you need to find the key for the door, and oh, there's a puzzle. Puzzles usually involve using pushable crates and pressure plates, and the game doesn't give you any clues on how to solve a puzzle, and it boils down most of the time to trial and error and finding the right combination of pressing a pressure plate, stepping into a portal, and then finding some kind of rhythm to that. And another problem is that many of these puzzles are so designed that you need to do it exactly as it is designed. No room for error, or a very small window of opportunity here. So in order to get a door open, you press a plate, you move to the portal, get into another portal, and then go to the open door that's almost closing. That's how it works. That makes the whole game feel insanely difficult at times. Another problem is that even with the map, it is still confusing to navigate the halls because everything looks so similar. And there's quite a bit of backtracking. When you find the key, you have to move back to the place where the door is, open the door, find a machine, pull a lever, move back, that sort of thing. And besides the solving of puzzles, you fight enemies in real time. Some old that are recycled from the first game, and some new, like rats and spiders and roaches and variations of those. And they will relentlessly follow you around the maze. So that's a good thing, I think. So the pressure is on. You get a nice selection of weapons, including melee, pistols, rifles, energy weapons, and the combat is competent, where like energy weapons work well against robotic creatures and melee works best against humanoids and insectoids. And there's also some gadgets you can find, like you can lay a bomb or you can electrify the floor for a small period of time. But the problem with the combat, and it boils down to a silly game of sidestepping. As you can see right here, it's kind of silly. You kind of move around and you hit the enemy and then move away and then do it again. And also, there's very little feedback from the combat. You don't see the weapon that you're using, just a quick sound effect. So it feels weak. Ever so often, you get an upgrade to enhance your stats so you do better in the combat. But there are no party members to recruit, so you're basically on your own the whole time. In conclusion, even with the added user-friendly options like the auto map and the difficulty settings and the possibility to save your game, a dungeon crawler like this is still an acquired taste. It does invoke a nostalgic feeling. For me, because I played those games back in the 90s. But after a while, you start to realize that there was a reason why these type of games became obsolete or went out of fashion. The limited movement, there's no freedom of movement. You move left and right, back and forth, that's it. And the repetitive nature of the mazes and the weak combat, it just makes this game only suitable, I think, for old school diehard fans of the genre. Newcomers, I don't think they're gonna like this game very much. So overall, it's not on par with The Legend of Grimrock. There's some fun to be had for people like me, but it's short-lived. So average at best. Thank you guys for watching and see you next time.